Hi guys, so I wanted to discuss Sonnet 30 by Edmund Spenser. Um, this is a sonnet, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sonnets. Sonnets are 14-line poems with a rhyme scheme, and there's different formulas or patterns to the rhyme schemes just depending on who's writing the sonnet. Edmund Spenser, who wrote Sonnet 30, has a different rhyme scheme that he follows than what Shakespeare did. So again, a sonnet is a 14-line poem, and the last two lines, so lines 13 and 14, usually answer questions or have a concluding thought to whatever has gone on in lines 1 through 12. So lines 13 and 14, the last two lines, usually answer or provide a concluding thought to what has gone on in all the lines previous in the poem. Okay, so again, a sonnet is a 14-line poem. So most sonnets do not have an actual name. They go by a number. I think Edmund Spenser had 50 or 60 sonnets. Shakespeare had 150 or so. I can't remember the exact numbers. I'd have to look them up. But what I always like to do is at the end of the discussion come up with an alternative name instead of a number. Instead of calling it Sonnet 30, what could we call this? And we'll get to that in the end of this conversation. So one word that I want you to, one of your terms that was on your grid that I want to show you an example of today is enjambment. And enjambment is when you go straight from one end of a line to another line. So you don't pause, you don't stop, there's no punctuation. You go straight from the end of one line right into another. So I definitely encourage you, before we start going over the poem, to pause it and on your poem, your copy that was in your paper, number the lines of the sonnet. So it should be 1 through 14. So I'm going to start with the first quatrain, which is the first 4 lines. Notice that this sonnet is not really broken into stanzas, but it still has like 4 lines that kind of work together as groups. So the first 4 lines, the second 4 lines, the third 4 lines, and then the last 2 lines. So the first quatrain in this poem: my love is like to ice, and I to fire. How cometh then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire, but harder grows the more I her entreat? So first of all, I wanted you to notice the enjambment from line 2 to 3. How comes it then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire? At the end of line 2, great, I did not pause before I went right into the beginning of line 3. That's enjambment. You just don't pause. So now let's look at those first 4 lines. The first thing you need to do is decide if there's any vocab that you don't know. So I marked the word entreat. Let me see if I can highlight it for you guys. I marked the word entreat because that may be a word that you don't know. Entreat means to beg or to plead. Okay, so it's kind of like you're desperate, you really want something, so you turn to entreating, okay, where you beg, you plead, I really need this is what needs to happen, please help me, okay? So let's look at what our speaker is talking about. Going back to line 1, my love is like to ice. First of all, notice here that love is capitalized. So when something's capitalized, it's meant to be something very specific, almost like a proper noun in this case. So love in this case is not a verb, not saying I love you. It's not an action. Love is a person in this case. So my love, okay, so if I were talking to my husband, I would call him my love, okay? My love is like to ice and I to fire. Well, right here in line 1, we have a simile and a metaphor. So he is saying his love, his girl, is like to ice, and he, the speaker, I, am to fire. Well, first of all, think about this. Ice and fire are polar opposites, okay? You don't really picture the two working well together because obviously the fire is meant to melt the ice. So you need to start off knowing that, these things are two totally different things and not meant to pair together. So his love is like ice and he is to fire, okay? Metaphor, he is fire. So first of all, when someone says, oh, he's being cold to me or she's being cold to me, that means that someone is ignoring you, giving you the brush off the cold shoulder. So right away, we learn that his love, his girl, is not very affectionate, not very loving, okay? And we kind of expect his fire to wear her down. That's what we learn in line 1. So my love is like to ice and I to fire. How cometh then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire? So he starts to ask a question. Why is her coldness not melting away by his strong desire for her? Think about it. We all want to be accepted by people, wanted by our friends, wanted by our families. We want to be desired. We want people to desire to be around us, okay? And so he's like, why is she still so cold when my attention, my affection, my desire for her is so great? And then he asks a question in line 4. But harder grows the more I her entreat. Well, we already said that the word entreat means to beg or to plead. So he says, why is her ice growing harder the more I beg and plead with her? So he's saying basically, I'm begging her to love me, and she is turning her back even more. Okay? That's the end of the first quatrain. Now, the second quatrain would be lines, if you've numbered, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, line 5 and 6. Or how comes it that my exceeding heat is not allayed by her heart frozen cold? So again, we have another enjambment. I went straight from heat to is. So, or how comes it that my exceeding heat is not allayed by her heart frozen cold? Well, we have a word here that may be new to you all, allayed. Allayed means to reduce or diminish, okay? So to make smaller, to make less. So, he says, why is my desire, why is my attention, my heat for her not made less by her coldness? So he wonders, he asks himself, why do I keep pursuing her and like giving her everything when she's like totally ignoring me and cold towards me? He's questioning himself. Why do I keep doing it? Okay. Lines 7 and 8. But that I burn much more in boiling sweat and feel my flames augmented manifold. Okay, so first thing first, we have two words that we need to figure out what they mean. Augmented and manifold. So augmented means to make larger, so make the size of something larger. And manifold means to grow in number. So augmented, if I were to spill a little bit of my Coke, I would augment that by spilling more, okay? It would grow in size. Manifold means to, when I'm doing the live chat, one person shows up and then they text their friends and 5 more people show up. So augment and grow larger in size, manifold, grow larger in number. So going back to those two lines, lines 7 and 8, so he just got done asking in lines 5 and 6, why do I keep doing this when like she's ignoring me more and more? And he says, but that I burn much more in a boiling sweat. First of all, that's a hyperbole, an extreme exaggeration. Sweat never gets hot enough to boil, okay? But that I burn much more in boiling sweat and feel my flames augment, so grow larger, and manifold, grow more. So he says, I get it. Like, if I was sweating, I would be boiling, and my flames, remember he compared himself to fire earlier, they just keep getting larger. So his love for her just keeps growing exponentially, out of control. Okay? Even though she's turning her back on him and saying, buddy, not interested. Okay, the last quatrain, so lines 9, 10, 11, and 12. What more miraculous thing may be told that fire, which all things melts, should harden ice? So he's saying, wow, this is like a miracle that my fire is not melting ice, but making it harder. So he's saying that his love for her goes against everything that should be normal or natural. Okay, he knows that he should be stopping his affection for her because she's totally blocked him. I mean, picture on social media when you block people and totally shut them down, or you leave them on red and they're not getting the clue. Okay, that's basically what she's doing to him. And he's saying, man, the natural thing is to say, okay, she doesn't want to talk to me, so I'm done. But he's saying, no, this is unnatural. I can't stop. I'm out of control. Lines 11 and 12. And ice, which is congealed with senseless cold. So he's saying, I don't understand why she's so cold. I mean, I'm giving her my love, my affection, my attention, but yet she's so cold. Should kindle fire by wonderful device. So kindle means to start. If you've ever started a fire in a fire pit or on your property, you know that when you kindle fire, you start a fire, okay? And so he's saying, an ice which is congealed with senseless cold should kindle fire by wonderful device. He's saying instead her coldness just gets his fire going even stronger, okay? It just doesn't make sense. He's saying that he is so unnaturally caught up in her that things that should make sense aren't happening, okay? And then we have our couplet, okay? Remember, the couplet are the last two lines of a sonnet, and it kind of sums up everything, concludes everything, answers any questions. So this couplet, such is the power of love and gentle mind that it can alter all the course of kind. And I think line 14 is the key here. It's saying basically love can alter the universe. Love can change the dynamics of what you think should and will happen. So in this case, he is pursuing someone that has shut the door on him, okay? And he's saying that has altered nature, altered who he should be, and he is basically hopeless, in love with her, regardless of how she responds. Okay, so one of the things I wanted you to think about was, okay, instead of calling it Sonnet 30, what could we call it? One of my thoughts would certainly be Fire and Ice, so Fire and Ice and Fire, Unmeltable, Roaring Flames, just any of those allusions to fire or ice, okay? So as far as really what I want you to focus on, so what would be our conclusion here? And or our theme if you will. And I would say our conclusion or our theme that the author is trying to, the message about life that the author is trying to teach us is that love can be so powerful that it alters your course in life, that it totally changes your life and shapes who you are as a person, okay? That some people have an unwavering love for one another, or an unwavering love for someone, and there's nothing that can be done to change someone's love for another person. Okay, if we look at some of the words that the author used, we get a sense of tone. Remember, tone is how the author feels about the subject or the speaker feels about the subject. So when we go back in and look at the poem, we see words such as ice, fire, cold so great, dissolved, entreat. Okay, remember, entreat means to beg or to plead. Allayed means to make smaller. Boiling sweat, heart frozen cold, senseless. The majority of the words, sorry, I didn't get all the letters. The majority of the words in this poem have a negative connotation, not a happy vibe to them, okay? So you immediately get the sense in this poem that the person is struggling through something, that things are not perfect, that and in this case he's chasing love that is not slowing down for him, okay? So the tone is definitely what would I say? I would say the tone is heartbroken, the tone is desperate, the tone is pleading, the tone is broken as far as his love is not being built like he wants it, so it's broken. Let's see, what else could I say about this? We talked about the alternative title. So I think the important thing as you go through a poem is to first look and see what words you don't know, because you need those definitions to help you figure out what each line is talking about. Then you want to establish a theme. What do you think the message is? What can you conclude that the author's message is that he or she is trying to teach you? And then you want to look for those literary devices like hyperbole, simile, metaphor, paradox, which we'll talk about more in your questions today. So your next step is to go on Google Classroom, and I'm going to put some questions where you have to analyze Break Even by the Script and Sonnet 30 by Edmund Spenser. Right now I have to go to the cafeteria and help do some lunches and breakfast packages that they'll take out later today, but I will get those questions on Google Classroom soon. Remember, I sent a message out. Instead of answering the questions that are in the packet and doing them on paper, because I don't know when I will see you, I want you to go ahead and submit the answers to Google Classroom so that I can go ahead and grade those and we can continue to move forward. Just an FYI, you are responsible for all your work that the teachers assign. These are supposed to be regular school days. We're just doing them in an alternative format. So you don't want to get zeros from me or any other teacher. So please do all your assignments, and we're trying to be very transparent and straightforward as here's what you need to do. So for me, what you need to make sure you do is listen to the recording of Break Even from the script where I broke it down. Make sure that you have listened to this full recording of Sonnet 30 where I broke it down. There's one question, it's called checking in or check-in on Google Classroom that you get 10 points for. Basically, you're just confirming for me that you're seeing everything. And I know here's the breakdown of it. If one person sees it, I know that anyone else that logs in can see it. So please don't try to log in and tell me, oh, I didn't see that particular assignment, I couldn't do it. Because I know that if one person sees it and anyone else that logs in after that, they can see it too. So listen to both explanations of the script in Sonnet 30, answer the check-in question, and then later on today, I'll be putting questions for the script in our Break Even and Sonnet 30. I'll be putting those in Google Classroom, and you will have till Sunday night at 11:59 to answer them. So I hope this helps some. I miss you all. I'm sorry I can't see you. Feel free to email me or message me on Remind, and we'll just go from there. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.